Hey there, YouTube. Ghost Jake here with you tonight. I just got done watching the Exorcist TV show, Season 2, Episode 5 on Hulu because I missed it at 9 because I was previously doing my review for Once Upon a Time because I caught that one at 8. Now, this episode was extremely good. Extremely good, extremely good. At least in my opinion, because a lot of stuff finally happened. The demon in the Seattle location finally, without a doubt, made its presence known in this episode. Without a shadow of a doubt. Now we start off in this episode with Father Bennett and that woman he's helping. I believe her code name is Mouse. They're getting ready to go back to Chicago to take on the Maria Walters integration demon. Before that, they pretty much kill Sister Dolores. They give her like a shot of like holy water they like stab her in the neck. Okay, and that was pretty much. I think that was pretty much it with Father Bennett and that female character known as Mouse. And I think pretty much after that, everything centered on everything centered on the Seattle location in this episode. When we pick up on the Seattle location, we start off with Andy and Verity in Grace's room, and in Grace's room, or the Nikki shrine. That's what it actually is, and the Nikki shrine. That's what it is, and Verity snaps Andy back into reality. She says, "Hey, like, who are you talking to?" Was like, "What are you doing?" And you can see like the hallucination flash before his eyes and go back into like reality, which was pretty well done. Then we have Verity leaves the room, and then we have like Grace, who wasn't. If you saw the last episode, if you saw episode 4 2 weeks ago, or watched it on Hulu, anytime since it aired, you find out at the end that Grace wasn't real. Now, here is the interesting part. This happened early on in the episode. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned someone who was going to get possessed in the Seattle location at Andy's place. At first, I initially thought it was Caleb, because of how, just in like episode 2 or 1, how distressed he was when his father didn't show up to his parole hearing. and then how he went and stood on the haunted well for like a long time. But now I am thinking the possessed person. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking though the possessed person is probably going to be Andy now. Right? And there was a big clue that pointed to that. A pretty big clue in the episode. Well, like after Andy was alone in like the Nikki shrine or Grace's room, and he saw like Grace, and then all of a sudden Grace gave Andy like this mark on his like shoulder, like a bug bite or something, because apparently the demon is using the demon is using the demon is using Grace to like get to Andy and everyone else. And one of the 3 stages of possession happened in this episode. It was oppression, if I said that correctly. That mark Grace gave Andy on his like shoulder, oppression. And oppression is, if I remember this correctly, oppression is when a demonic entity marks its target. There's like physical, like damage or psychological damage, to their target to make them weak. Then after that is actual possession. So there's a pretty good chance that the actual person going to be possessed in Seattle might be Andy. If I had to give a percentage, I would say that's probably 90% that's going to happen just based off what I saw of this episode. So I'm leaving a 10% chance that I could be wrong. Now, anyway, Andy is realizing that Grace is not real, and he's telling her to leave him alone, because he wants to telling him to leave him alone because he doesn't want to be hallucinating anymore, right? And then like Grace like marks him again, like made his shoulder look like a beehive's, like a little beehive, and then like a yellow jacket came out of his like shoulder and like started going up to his eye. And I think that was all like a hallucination, but the mark is actually real. So, like I said, then all of a sudden, Father Thomas shows up to. All of a sudden, Father Thomas he shows up to Andy's house, and he wants to talk to Rose, and Verity answers the door. He's like, "Oh, the annoying priests are here," because she doesn't really care about the priests. And then Andy informs Rose that like their jobs as exorcists to go find demons and help people. And then pretty much Rose tells Father Thomas, you pretty much need to leave. I'm not going to expose Grace to this stuff again, especially after she's just been rescued from all this. Then pretty much Father Thomas starts to leave, and Father Thomas starts to leave, and then he is walking down the road. He gets a call from Father Marcus, And what Marcus was doing, he was finding out, like about the island. He was still talking to the fish and wildlife biologist. He's talking to him. Was like, has anything, really strange happened on this island? It's like bar. He's like bar fight strange, or the fish and wildlife's like bar fight strange, or this guy strange. And this guy, he apparently like murdered his entire family. I can't remember what they said his name was, and I just watched it on Hulu. But apparently he murdered his entire family. So Father Marcus decides to go on his boat to go meet the daughter who survived. Meet the daughter who survived this attack of her father, and then they arrive at the island. But before they arrive at the island, Father Marcus, he calls Thomas and he tells Father Marcus. Father Marcus tells Thomas about this possession that happened like 50 or 60 years ago, or about what Father Marcus believes is possession, right? And then Father Thomas's question is like, is it still going to be here? Like, after like a 50-year time gap? And the answer is yes. That is very much a possibility. Because if you look at the demon from The Exorcist and the mini in the prequel, The Exorcist, that demon waited until Father Merrin was, I don't know how old he was in the mini in the prequel to The Exorcist, but my point is, it waited until Father Merrin was an old man to seek his revenge, and after The Exorcist, it waited until Reagan was all grown up with kids of her own to possess her daughter. So it waits sometimes to get its revenge. And then anyway, Andy, he back at the house. Andy is getting frustrated with all these hallucinations. So he's like, we need to take a break, and because it's been like 14 years since Nikki died, and so he and all the children decided to go camping in the woods, thinking that they'll have enough of the hallucination of grace. But that is not necessarily the case, because if one of the people was possessed, like I think Andy is, because of all the mental warfare going on in his mind, and now the mark Grace gave him, like the difference between a haunted person and haunted places. With a haunted person, no matter if it's a ghost or a demon or some other ghostly entity, it's going to follow you no matter where you go. And with the haunted place, it's pretty much going to stay stationary to the place or the land. Anyway, so they go out in the middle of the woods and they're camping. And then all of a sudden they're like doing typical camping stuff, roasting marshmallows, putting up tents, and then all of a sudden Andy sees Grace, right? Talking to her, and he's like, leave me alone. Like, you're not real, and you can tell that's upsetting the demon or Grace. Anyway, then we see Father Thomas, we see, before that, there while they were roasting marshmallows, Grace walks behind um, Chuck, I believe his name is, and like does something to him, and then like returns to the house because Grace returns to the house returns to the house because Father Thomas breaks into the house looking for signs of possession since the family is not there. Even though Father Marcus told Father Thomas to wait until the morning so they could go there together, but he decides to break into the house anyway. And she's starting to find signs of possession. But anyway, on the island where that girl's parents got possessed, Father Marcus makes some clues about it actually is possession because the girl, Father Marcus asks her straight up, is like, why do you think he did it? It's like, that's not my dad. Before this happened, my dad was a very loving and kind man, right? And, excuse me, he was a loving, kind man, and he would never think of doing something like this. And then the girl ends up, and then Father Thomas asks a question, is like, did he speak any other languages? Did he do anything weird? And then she says she spoke in a language he never spoke before, and Marcus says, did he take any other class? Did he know any other languages? Like, no, he barely finished 8th grade, or didn't even finish 8th grade. So no knowledge of any other languages, right there. So Father Thomas and Father Marcus and the Fish and Wildlife biologists leave. Now, Now back at the campsite, Chuck goes up and goes to go use the bathroom, but apparently he's like sleepwalking or doing something, and then Verity finds him Verity finds him in that about the witch's well they were talking about, and the witch's well they were talking about, and he's bashing his head against the wall over and over and over and over and over again. But while that's happening, Father Thomas is investigating the house, and you actually see you see Grace with a doll in her hand, whacking its head against the wall. So the demon voodooed Chuck to the doll, and anything that she does to the doll happens to Chuck. And then Verity goes in and tries to wake him up, and then Grace turns the doll around and grabs the doll by the throat, and then Chuck turns around and grabs Verity by the throat and puts her towards the wall and starts pounding, and starts like bashing her head against the wall and tightening his grip on her throat. And back at the house, Grace is doing the same thing to the doll. So like she has control over Chuck through like a voodoo possession type of thing. And then Father Thomas is like, like in the name of Jesus Christ, show me a sign of your presence. And then all of a sudden, like, the house starts to shake, and then Grace like grabs his arm, and he has one of his mind link hallucinations when he let the demon into his mind in episode 1 and 2. And like the demon is showing him like the history of of all the possessions. And then he just like collapses to the floor and wakes up. right? It's a very good episode so far. And then Father Marcus is starting to pray in the boat after he confesses everything to the fish and wildlife biologist. And there's like, and fish and biologist says, pretty much, what did you hear? And then he pretty much said nothing. And I think Father Marcus is starting to get his faith back. And believe me, it's a good thing he is, because I'm predicting his faith is going to come in handy with this demon. Closer to the end of the season, how many episodes we get, I don't know, but I think his faith is going to be very vital to that information, right? Now, like, after Andy, okay, now back to the witch's house. Like, Andy is like, stops Chuck from with the Andy stopped Chuck from like murdering Verity, and from from killing Verity, and so they had to take Verity to the hospital, and they had to take Chuck to the police station, because he needs to go through to the police station or to somewhere, because he needs to go through the steps need to be taken, because even though he didn't mean to, because he was a demon's pawn, still stuff has to be stuff has to go. They have to go through the proper recommendations, how to deal with this stuff. Anyway, now, closer to the end of the episode, Father Thomas leaves the house, right? Father Marcus leaves the house. And and then Andy goes straight up to Grace's room. Right? Goes back up to Grace's room. Oh. Goes up to Grace's room, or the Nikki shrine. This is another sign that it might be Andy being the one possessed, because he starts trashing the room, and then all of a sudden he throws this rock through this pitcher. It's like, and he tells the person to get out of the house. Right? And then all of a sudden the person stands up, and it's a lot taller than a kid. And then Andy takes off the mask, or Andy takes off the mask, or they unveil the mask, and the demon has transformed himself into Andy's dead wife, Nikki, to continue to mess with his mind. Anyway, I thought this was a very good episode. I can't wait for episode 6. Anyway, guys, this is Ghost Jake signing off. See you later.